Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
And today we are talking once more about Metal Gear. Metal Gear, right? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Metal Gear. There's a special emphasis on gear.
Metal Gear. Solid 3 today? 3's today. We're doing 3.
3 is
in the
today.
title. That's not a spoiler. Everyone sees it in the title.
Yeah. Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater.
Ooh, cool name.
Yeah, very cool name. So I hope you guys enjoyed the break that we had from Metal Gear with some Zelda stuff a couple weeks ago. And then last week we talked about video game difficulty on a Codex discussion episode. But you can't get away from me that easily. And today I'm here to talk to you about my favorite Metal Gear Solid game, Metal Gear Solid 3.
So this is your favorite. This is your favorite.
This is my favorite. Yeah, well, there's some caveats there because this is my favorite standalone. Like if you're like, hey, Tyler, I can only play one Metal Gear Solid game and I'm never playing any other game, which one should it be? It's got to be Metal Gear Solid 3. Definitely the best standalone story by far.
You heard it here first, folks.
Taken as a whole, I like the build up to Metal Gear Solid 4. There's a lot of like really cool fan service in Metal Gear Solid 4, but if you're just playing it and you don't have all of the context necessary to get that fan service, then you don't get as much out of it. You would get more out of Metal Gear Solid 3. So that's why it's my favorite standalone Metal Gear Solid game.
Excellent.
Yeah. So a few weeks ago, I talked a lot about how much I love Metal Gear Solid 2. I talked it up a pretty big game. And Lila in the background there, I can tell she is really, really into Metal Gear Solid 2 as well.
She's meowing outside my door right now. That went through the door into the recorder. That's insane.
Wow.
She's got some pipes. She's not afraid to sing.
She's a big fan of Metal Gear Solid 2, and I agree. I talked it up a pretty big game, and I know there was some of you out there who took that to heart and played the game based on my glowing review, and I hope I didn't disappoint you. But believe me when I say that as much as I love Metal Gear Solid 2, I love Metal Gear Solid 3 even more.
Whoa.
Yeah. So we're really, really swinging for the fences here in terms of reviews of Metal Gear games. So let's start at the beginning, talk a little bit about development here. After Metal Gear Solid 2 was a smash hit, a third one was, of course, inevitable. So they got started on it pretty soon after Metal Gear Solid 2 came out. They took a little bit of a break. They took like kind of a Christmas break off, and Kojima sort of spent that time, because I guess he doesn't take vacations, he spent that time drawing up documents and writing things about what he wanted out of Metal Gear Solid 3. So originally, the game was supposed to be developed for the PlayStation 3, but since that was so far away, they shifted their priorities to make it a PS2 release, and that was probably the right thing to do, because even by the time Metal Gear Solid 3 came out in late 2004, that's still 2 years away from the PS3's release. So I want to quote a Eurogamer article from about that time when the game came out. Kojima said, "If I had wanted to release Metal Gear Solid 3 within a year of releasing Metal Gear Solid 2, the easiest way to do that would be to pick up where Metal Gear Solid 2 ended, using the same game engine and same game system, even the same characters," he told GameSpy. "I guess Electronic Arts and many other companies do this, but if I did that, it would be no fun at all." Dang, dude. That is a hot take on EA right there.
Hot takes.
Kojima, like, really bringing the fire here. Even back in 2004, EA was taking tomatoes from the gaming public.
They've been taking tomatoes for a long time. That should be their slogan. EA taking tomatoes since 2004.
Yeah. I feel like they sort of ebb and flow. Like every couple of years, it switches back and forth between EA and Activision over which one is like doing well and which one is taking the tomatoes. Either way, they just make a ton of money, so it doesn't really matter.
I can't think
to them.
of some better hot video game goss though than the Battlefront 2 debacle with loot boxes. Oh, that was fun. That was just a fun time to get angry at something. For
the memes, sense of pride and accomplishment. That meme is still so good. So
sweet.
Yeah. I got a little bit more from that Eurogamer article here. So this is a quote. "What we did to create the experimental environment was that we went to islands like Yokoshima, Amami, Oshima, and even places in Canada," Kojima told GameSpy this week in 2004. "There are places with a lot of vegetation, like Japanese jungles. Obviously not Canada. Based on our research, we created this fictional jungle forest to see if it worked. From here, Kojima's team had to work out how the game would work in the jungle, so they called in the same military advisor who advised them on Metal Gear Solid 2, Moto Mori, and asked him how they would survive in the wild. Mr. Mori taught us how camouflage works in the wilderness, and he showed us CQC techniques. CQC stands for close quarters combat. We'll talk about that in a second. He showed us how the people would really fight against each other. He also taught us the technique of stalking, which is very slow. You don't make any sounds. In the meantime, Kojima himself was working on the actual plot and characters of the game, developing them in such a way to fit the new setting. So what we showed at E3 2003 was basically the whole thing working in the jungle. And that's the end of the Eurogamer article.
Stuff a lot of research.
Yeah, they really went hard. So I think it's important when you're talking about the setting for Metal Gear Solid 3, I think it's worth talking about some of the overarching plan that Kojima had for the series. So to set the scene here, Metal Gear Solid 3 takes place in the Russian jungle, mostly. It's about 2/3 in the outdoors and then about 1/3 indoors. It takes place in the Russian jungle, and there's a lot of survival stuff that goes along with that, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Do you think a good subtitle for this game could be Metal Gear Solid 3: The Great Outdoors?
It could be, yeah.
The Great Russian Outdoors.
The Great Russian Outdoors. Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, which is what the re-release was called, because there's a lot of like survival elements going on in Metal Gear Solid 3.
Ooh, I'm excited to hear about this.
Yeah, but the overarching plan that Kojima had for the series here, at least for the first 3 games, he wanted them to be about 3 things. And we kind of talked about this in our last episode, so I'll just give you a quick refresher. Memes, genes, and scenes. Memes are in Metal Gear Solid 2, and we're talking about the academic term memes, not like the funny jokes on the internet images memes, like the scientific of the word, which is sort of like genes, except for it's more ideas. Like, so in life, your genes are passed down, which are like your genetics, right? And then your memes are passed down, which are your thoughts. So like, remember, when you like are about to do something and you hear your dad's voice in your head and he's like, don't do that. That's your dad's memes being passed down to you,
Oh, dad memes.
Yeah. So the first game is about genes. That's Liquid Snake is a clone of Solid Snake, and he supposedly has weaker genes. There's a whole thing about that. Second game's about memes. Third one is about scenes. So the idea here in Metal Gear Solid 3 is that your environment and surroundings affects you as a human being, not just in the physical sense, but also in other senses, like the geopolitical surroundings too. So like where you are, like the jungle matters, right? But like the fact that you're in the Russian jungle in 1960s geopolitics means something when there's an American in the Russian jungle, right? So yeah, it's important because Metal Gear Solid 3 involves a lot of Snake wrestling with his boss and mentor, the boss. And the boss is the antagonist in the game. So it's tough. Like this is the person that made him who he is the bad guy in this game, which is very tough for him. And he has to deal with that.
It's a struggle,
so anyway,
an emotional
it's a big struggle. Yeah. And she totally kicks his butt a bunch of times in the game. Man, she totally wrecks him. So to represent this, Kojima made the game take place in a very different place and time than the other games. So those other games took place in kind of the near future, which is actually now the past because they're so old. And they were fairly similar. They were mostly indoors in military buildings. But Metal Gear Solid 3 spends a lot of time outside, in the jungle, in the 1960s, during the Cold War. And these are all scenes that affect Snake and the storyline. So now that we've talked about the scene and how it takes place in the 60s, let's talk a little bit about the story here. I want to avoid some spoilers because even though this game is over 15 years old now, this story is one of my very favorite in all of gaming, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't played it. So maybe after you've played it someday, Mike, we can do a spoiler cast where we just talk about all the stories of Metal Gear Solid and spoil the heck out of them.
It's going to take me a long time because I'm really bad at the game.
I believe that you can get better at them. I believe in you, Mike.
Do you think I can get good?
I think you can get good.
Oh, man, that's all I'm trying to do is get good.
As Jake the dog once said, sucking at something is the first step to being kind of good at something.
We should have more Jake the dog quotes on here.
Yeah. So all of these stories taken together are my very favorite in gaming. It's super anime. Like there's a lot of weird stuff that happens too, and I just love it. We'll get to that in a bit. Anyway, the story is divided into 2 parts, kind of like Metal Gear Solid 2, how Metal Gear Solid 2 has the tanker and then the plant chapter. This one has 2 parts as well. A shorter part that serves mostly as a prologue, and then there's a longer part that's the main story. So the first part is called The Virtuous Mission. And I'm not afraid to spoil too much here. This thing takes like 2 hours, maybe. In The Virtuous Mission, you play as Snake, but not as Solid Snake from the earlier games. You play as a character named Naked Snake.
Gross.
I can't remember exactly why he's called Naked Snake, but he's not naked in the game.
That's good.
He is fully clothed. But it makes sense that you wouldn't play as Solid Snake because this game takes place in 1964, way before Solid Snake was ever born. So Naked Snake looks and sounds just like Solid Snake. So it's pretty easy transition for the player to make, I think. It's the same voice actor. He looks exactly the same. But it is not the same person, so that's important to remember when you're playing the game. Anyway, Naked Snake drops into the jungles of Selinoyarsk in Russia. Well, it was the USSR at the time in 1964. He's there to rescue a nuclear scientist named Sokolov. He's got a radio, which serves the same function as the codec does in the first game, or the games before, but this is the 60s. The codec hadn't been invented yet. So he talks to his crew on the radio, and one of the people on the radio is his commander and mentor, known as the boss. And a person with a name like that has got to be the ultimate badass, and you would be right to think that. The boss, I'm going to take a side note here to tell you about how awesome the boss is in just one quick sentence. The boss is so awesome, she actually gave birth to a baby on the battlefield during the invasion of Normandy in World War II. That's what I mean when I talk about how anime this storyline is. It is ridiculous.
It is insane.
But just take it at face value, right? Don't think too much about it. Like, why would a 9 months pregnant woman be storming the beach at Normandy? We don't think about that, right?
Side note, I've been watching on Netflix JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and so nothing will surprise me anymore. This is the weirdest anime show I've ever seen. It's amazing. So, dude, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for Normandy battlefield births. That's fine. It's totally fine.
You've just got to be okay with it. That's part of her backstory. You never actually see that, but it's just like part of like, they're like, oh, how can we make the boss super awesome? I know. She gave birth to somebody on the battlefield during World War II in the invasion of Normandy. Like, it just like kept adding on things that made it even cooler. So anyway, Sokolov, that nuclear scientist, is developing a walking battle tank. So even 50 years ago, we were worried about Metal Gears. So you got to get him out of there, presumably so you can like formulate a plan to steal or destroy this robot that's not called Metal Gear. It's called the Shagohod, but it is definitely a proto Metal Gear. But twist, when you almost get Sokolov out of there, he gets kidnapped by the Cobra unit, which is the group of bad guys, like how the first game had Foxhound, and then Dead Cell was in Metal Gear Solid 2. So these guys are a group of supernatural weirdo bad guys, of course. But more importantly, the boss shows up, and she tells you she's defected to the Soviet Union, and then she throws Snake off a bridge. And then, in true anime fashion, she hands over a mini nuclear missile to the leader of the Cobra unit. His name's Volgan. And he launches it, he blows it up, and it's all to cover up the fact that they just stole the Shagohod, I think. I'm pretty sure they just stole it. Anyway, this gets blamed on the boss, and Snake has to be airlifted out after sustaining heavy injuries from falling off the bridge. So then the second part of the game...
Snake lives. That's the Snake
lives. He does live, yeah. And then the second part of the game basically involves Snake heading back to the Russian jungles to defeat the Cobra unit, rescue Sokolov, destroy the Shagohod, and find out just what made the boss defect to the Soviet Union.
Now,
spoilers.
Is that Naked Snake or Solid Snake?
Naked Snake.
Okay, so you play as Naked Snake the whole game.
Yes, you're playing as Naked Snake the whole game, and it all takes place in the mid-'60s.
Love it.
Yeah. And the whole unraveling of the story behind why the boss defects to the Soviet Union has some real good twists, some triple crosses and quadruple crosses, and it's great.
Love
super
it.
Anime, like I said. Yep. Gameplay-wise, you're looking at pretty standard Metal Gear fare here. Sneaking, shooting, disabling nuclear devices, all par for the course. They did add a few new systems. You got a camouflage system, so you can switch your outfit while you're sneaking around to like better camouflage to the environment. And then they added a system called CQC, or Close Quarters Combat, that allows you to kind of fight people up close and take them out without using any of your ammo. So there was some like hand-to-hand combat stuff in the other Metal Gears, but this one has a real, a bit more in-depth system for that. So,
do they keep this system for later Metal Gear games?
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 4 also has CQC in it. And they do, I think there's a weird story thing that they do. It's like, why does Solid Snake now know CQC when he didn't know it before? And they like, there's some weird like anime stuff that happens there to make him know that, I think.
I think we could had like subtitle these whole Metal Gear podcast series with Metal Gear. It's anime stuff.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. So as I mentioned earlier, this game is all about the scene in which it takes place in, which is both the time period, 1964, and the physical location, the Russian jungle. This adds to the gameplay as well because there's now a system for treating injuries and eating food. So there's like a little bit of a survival simulator going on here. You can like catch snakes and eat them, hence the subtitle, Snake Eater. You can also catch other stuff and eat them. And some stuff is poisonous, some stuff is not. Sometimes you get shot and you start bleeding, so you have to like you have to put on a bandage and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool.
It's very in depth.
Yeah. Fans had really wanted a 3D camera angle here. But Kojima chose to stick with the top-down perspective that the other Metal Gear Solid games had used up to this point. So the older Metal Gear Solid games had mainly used indoor spaces and other man-made areas, mostly because the hardware of the day couldn't really be made to work with much more. But the jungles of Russia required an entire rewrite of the collision engine, since outdoor areas have like hills and rocks and stuff that need to be traversed, as opposed to just the flat surfaces that all the indoor areas of the original games had. It's kind of weird to me that the hardware could support it in 2004 for Metal Gear Solid 3, but couldn't in 2001 for Metal Gear Solid 2, considering they were both released on the PS2. But I guess that just shows you how over the course of a console's lifespan, developers get better at making games for them and being efficient and stuff like that. So they did have to cut the frame rate in half for Metal Gear Solid 3. So Metal Gear Solid 2 targets 60 frames per second and hits it most of the time. Metal Gear Solid 3 has a max of 30 frames per second, and even then it doesn't always hit it. So
it gets a little laggy.
Yeah, it gets a little laggy. So that's what you trade to get those hills and rocks and stuff. You trade a little bit in frame rate. So
you can't have it all.
That's right. Personally, I like the top-down camera angles in Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, but I am glad they revisited this decision when it came time to release Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, which we'll talk about in a little bit. That's the re-released version of it. They did add a third-person over-the-shoulder camera, which really helps out in certain parts of the game, and it makes the game feel a little bit more cinematic, too. It's definitely the best way to play the game. So let's talk about the Cobra unit here, because no Metal Gear game is complete without a group of bad guys who are humans, but also supernatural, and also have a weird name, like collective name together, and then they also have weird names solo as well. So let's go through some of these bosses. All right. You've got a guy named the Sorrow, and he can like talk to the dead or something. He sees dead people. And his boss fight is not a traditional boss fight. It's a walk down a river of dead bodies. You just walk for a long time. And the bodies in the river are the bodies of everyone you've killed up to that point in the game. It's like halfway through the game, I want to say. And so, like, the way they act during this sequence is kind of how you killed them. So, like, if you slit their throat, there's, like, guys, like, wandering up the river holding their necks and stuff. It's super, really morbid and gruesome. But if you're like me and you don't kill anybody in Metal Gear Solid games because you're a pacifist and you don't like fighting people, then no one's there, and it's just a really, really boring river walk through the rain.
It's just a tour, river. It's a river tour.
Yeah, and it's just really creepy because the Sorrow is just like saying mean things to you while you're walking down the river. It's like it's a psychological boss fight, not a physical boss fight, you know?
Did you get through really it psychologically? Do you feel good? You didn't
yeah.
You didn't feel bullied? Were you bullied by the Sorrow?
Oh, I definitely was bullied. Yeah, the Sorrow was really mean to me. He said some really mean things, even though I didn't kill anybody.
It's real messed up.
You've got another boss named the Fury, and he's like a cosmonaut. Russian cosmonaut. In fact, he was supposed to be the first person in space before Yuri Gagarin, but something happened with his rocket and he crashed before making it to space. So now he has a jetpack and he throws fire and stuff. I don't know.
It sounds
That's
legit.
What happens. Yeah, seems legit. Probably one of the most unique boss fights in all of gaming, you've got the End, and he's a sniper. He's 100 years old in 1964, which means he's so old that he actually fought in the Civil War. I think he's over 100 years old by the time Snake Eater happened. So he actually fought in the Civil War as a sniper, I think. I don't know how well guns could snipe during the Civil War, but if they could, he was doing it. So the boss fight, Snake is supposed to like take it slow and sneak up on him, and it's a pretty tense fight if you do it kind of as the fight is designed. But there are two other ways to beat him. One is right after a cutscene, you have an opportunity to snipe him if you're quick enough. He's like getting wheeled around in a wheelchair or something, and if you're quick, you can blast him. Two, after you've started the boss fight, if you turn your PS2 off and just wait a week or set the date on your console a week ahead, you'll like turn it back on and it'll just play a cutscene where Snake finds that the End died from old age and you don't have to fight him.
That's amazing. I love that they put that in there.
Yeah, me too. I think that's just hilarious. Like, yeah, it's just a cutscene where it's just like Snake's just like, I guess he's dead. And you just move on.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. You've got another one called The Fear, who is a bit of a stealth expert. And he just like gets all about being scary and fearsome. He's kind of standard boss fight. He sneaks around. You got to shoot him, I guess. Not too much remarkable going on there. And then the last one that I want to talk about is The Pain. and he's sort of a standard boss fight, except the Pain superpower is he's covered in bees, and so he just throws bees at you, and it hurts.
The
I
worst
guess.
boss ever.
Yeah, he's just got bees. I think they're hornets technically.
Is there like one of those beekeeping suits you can find though that makes you immune? That'd be sick.
You know what? I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was, because there's all kinds of different suits you can wear.
Ooh, if you kill him, does he drop honey?
I don't think so.
Oh, couple missed opportunities here, Kojima. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. There's one more member of the Cobra unit that is sort of a spoiler, so I will leave it alone here. But that's the Cobra unit. He's of them
covered in flies. Oh no!
Oh no! It's just lava everywhere.
He's just made of lava. Oh no!
All of the Cobra unit have great backstories, and they all contribute to the overall narrative. So I don't want to spoil too much, but my favorite is the sorrow, especially if you've killed a lot of people, since it really makes you think about all those people you've killed. And you just played Spec Ops: The Line. They kind of do a little bit of that in there, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they really make you feel bad for playing video games.
Feel some feels.
Yeah. Oh, man. Those are some great boss fights. You should play them.
I might do that Spec Ops Line next week.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I feel like it's fresh in my brain. I've played it. I'm going to take a break from Zelda. We'll get to it later. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's a good transition, because I didn't have a good transition to the music of the game.
Ooh, look at that, Mister. They call me Captain Segway.
That's right.
Actually, no, I'm a boss in Metal Gear. They call me the Segway. I'm covered in plot points that you can segue
to. So the music is done by the same guy who did Metal Gear Solid 2, along with Norihiko Hibino. Each Metal Gear Solid has had a song with vocals in it. I wrote down the same guy who did Metal Gear Solid 2 and then didn't write who that is. That's Henry Gregson Williams, by the way, who is like a movie score person too. So he's pretty legit. So anyway, each Metal Gear Solid game has a song with vocals in it, and Snake Eater really doubles down on it. So since the game is set in the 60s, there's kind of a 60s spy movie feel to it, kind of like old James Bond movies. So of course, there's a really elaborate opening credits scene with the song Snake Eater, sung by Elisa Fiorillo. Fiorillo? I don't know. It has some really weird lyrics like, "Some days you go through the rain, some days you feed on a tree frog." Those are actual words from the song.
Dude, I love it.
Overall, sorry, go ahead.
It sounds like that song slaps. That's all I'm going to say.
It really does. No, it's a great song. I love it. It has it's just very, very James Bond. I was going to sing it here, but I don't think I could do it justice. And so I would rather you just look it up on YouTube and find the song, because it's fantastic. Oh, man. It's great. So after all this, how did the game do when it came out? Well, it came out in North America first, which is a little weird. We're starting to get towards the era of games sort of being more simultaneously released around the world. But it was still a little weird in 2004 that it came out in North America first on November 17th, 2004. And then the Japanese release came out about a month later on December 16th. It came out in Europe and Australia in March of 2005, a few months later. And it was a massive hit critically. Everyone loved it. It got 8s and 9s pretty much across the board. Critics praised the game's improvements over Metal Gear Solid 2 and the storyline, which is still bonkers, but it is easier to follow than Metal Gear Solid 2, which tells you how bonkers the Metal Gear Solid 2 story is. The camouflage system received some mixed reviews, as did the game's frame rate. We talked about that earlier. Metal Gear Solid 2 was a 60 frames per second game, and Metal Gear Solid 3 was 30 frames and didn't even hit that most of the time. So it was definitely a downgrade, especially if you were playing one right after the other. You felt that downgrade. But it still won a bunch of awards, even if it didn't sell quite as well as Metal Gear Solid 2. I think the hype machine wasn't quite rolling as heavily as it had been for Metal Gear Solid 2, because Metal Gear Solid 2, like Metal Gear Solid 1 was kind of a little bit of a surprise hit because it hadn't been a huge presence in gaming before that. Like the earlier Metal Gear games were popular enough, but they weren't big. And then Metal Gear Solid hit it big, and then when it came time for Metal Gear Solid 2, you had the combined hype of it being Metal Gear Solid 2, the sequel to a game that people really loved, but also being on PS2. So it was like the hype for this new PS2 combined with the hype for this new Metal Gear game meant Metal Gear Solid 2 sold really, really well. It did about 7 million copies, I want to say, all told. That's Metal Gear Solid 2. But Metal Gear Solid 3 sold about 3.6 million copies, which is still definitely a success. Like, it still made a bunch of money. It was still worth doing. But it didn't quite have the same amount of hype around it as Metal Gear Solid 2 did. There's also a bit more competition in the stealth genre at this point. From a gameplay perspective, you had Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, and then Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow probably had come out by this point too. So I think in terms of just like stealth action, those games are better. Like if you want to just sneak around and stealth stuff, I think the Splinter Cell games are better. So... but Metal Gear Solid 3 still did really well, and it got a lot of praise for its game systems and its storyline and stuff.
Yeah, because I don't think Splinter Cell doesn't have any zany anime bad guys in it, though, and that's what it's all about. No, it really
doesn't. It's like a Tom Clancy storyline, which is why it's called Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell. It's like we got terrorists and trying to take over the world, and so you go stop them, and then you do. So it's like not a big deal.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers for every Splinter Cell game ever. Except for Conviction, where they like kill his daughter or something. It gets real dark in that game.
Yeah. Yikes.
But this wouldn't be a Metal Gear Solid game without a re-release, and so about a year later, Konami released Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, an extended 2-disc version of the game, which added that third-person camera that I talked about earlier, as well as European Extreme difficulty mode. So the biggest things that Subsistence added, though, were through the second disc. It came with emulations of Metal Gear 1 and 2 for the Master System, for the MSX. We talked about those several weeks ago on the podcast. And so these are not the NES versions, but the actual MSX, like real versions that Kojima would say are like the real versions, I guess. But they also added a brand new online multiplayer mode called Metal Gear Online.
Wow, I had no idea that it even existed until just now.
Yeah. Well, I never played this back in the day, so I couldn't really do it justice with a description, I'm sure. But basically, it was like a PvP multiplayer thing where you snuck around and you shot people and stuff like that. But unfortunately, soon after, in December of 2006, they shut it down.
Wow. That was not long-lasting at all.
Yeah, I think they were also starting to really go hard on development for Metal Gear Solid 4, which also included a multiplayer mode, which I think is shut down now too. So maybe they wanted to like drum up hype for that. I don't know. But if you're into it, there are some fan projects out there that are attempting to revive the game. So I don't know how well they work or how they work, but you may want to check those out if you're interested in checking out some Metal Gear Online. They also re-released this in 2007 as part of Metal Gear's 20th anniversary. Only this time, the second disc didn't include Metal Gear Online because it had been shut down by this point. Bummer. In 2011, the game became available on PS3 and Xbox 360 as part of the Metal Gear HD collection, which we've talked about before. That's Metal Gear Solid 2, 3, and Peace Walker all together. I'm pretty sure it's all on Game Pass, right? If you're on Xbox, isn't that?
It is, yes.
It's all on Game Pass. Yeah, so that's a great way to check it out. That's also the best way to play any of those games because they run super smooth and in HD and stuff like that. That collection is also available on PlayStation Vita, where I think it still is pretty good, but I don't think it quite has as good a reviews as the console version. Lastly, they released Metal Gear Solid 3D for the 3DS in 2012, which is a little weird in how it's played on the 3DS because you're missing an analog stick and you're missing a few buttons too, at least on the older 3DSs in 2012. But it is compatible with the Circle Pad Pro edition, and I'm pretty sure that carries over to later 3DS machines like the new 3DS and the new 2DS. So if you have a newer 3DS, you're probably going to be just fine. It uses the gyroscope to aim, which some people like. I usually prefer that. If it works well, I usually prefer that. This version is cool just because it's portable, but it also suffers from like substandard frame rate issues. I haven't played it, so can't really speak to how well it is. But yeah, so those are all the re-releases of Metal Gear Solid 3. I don't think there were any others after that. But at the end of the day, it's hard to argue over whether Metal Gear Solid 3 is an important title in gaming history. It definitely is. It's the first game chronologically in the whole Metal Gear saga. It's the best standalone story in the whole series, and I will stand by that. And it continued to define the stealth genre, even if it was receiving some heavy competition in the form of Splinter Cell. While I do think Splinter Cell is overall better stealth, Metal Gear Solid 3 is very, very good stealth gameplay, and it's definitely an improvement over the first two, so it's still worth checking out. It won a bunch of Game of the Year awards the year it came out, and it's one of my personal favorite games of all time. Fun fact, this is the only video game I've ever played that made me cry during the storyline. There are some real gut punches at the end of this game, so I hope I was able to get through it without spoiling too much. I just want to hype it up just enough so that you play it, but not so that it's ruined for you. But I want to go play it again now.
Did you cry because the sorrow bullied you? Be real with us. Be honest.
Yeah, that's part of it.
The sorrow shoved me into a locker.
He was really mean, okay? There's also some good stuff at the end in like the final cutscenes too, where there's some real double crossing and some people get done dirty, you know? That's all I'm gonna say.
It's messed up.
Yeah. So that's it. That's all I got for Metal Gear Solid 3. Mike, what you been playing?
I have been playing multiple games. I've been playing Wargroove a lot more on my Switch. That's fun. Been playing Super Mario World on my Switch. I'm just enjoying jumping in on that when I don't have a lot of time, you know, or just on the go. And I've been playing Apex Legends on Xbox because who doesn't?
Did they
like
put out the
that?
new map for that yet?
Not yet. So they had the original Kings Canyon last weekend as like a thing you could play, but I was gone last weekend, so I didn't get to play it, which was a big bummer. So I'm hoping they release something new. It's the map. Yeah, I don't really like the map right now with like the epicenter and stuff like that. It's just I just miss Kings Canyon. I heard they're going to release it though, like fully, and it's going to be redone in certain ways. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, but I'm enjoying it. I bought the battle pass, and that kind of gives me something to go for, you know, which feels nice. But really, it's just a way for me to talk to my friends online.
Yeah.
Destiny, we got our titles.
Yeah, that's true. We got the Savior title.
And now I feel like I don't have anything to do, so I'm just taking a break and playing other games.
Next weekend, Trials is back.
Oh, yeah. By the way,
the weekend after next, I guess.
I've been playing Doom. I played some Doom games. I played Doom 1 on my Switch, and then I bought Doom 2, which I haven't booted up yet, and then I played Doom 3 on Xbox because I discovered the sale on Xbox, bought Doom 3 for $3, and then was like, oh, it's on sale everywhere, and then I bought Doom 2 on Switch.
Yeah, I bought Doom 3 on sale. Like they're like you can get all 3 Doom games on Switch. I think it's still going on until like tomorrow. You can get them all for like $6 total.
Yeah,
so
it's crazy.
I bought Doom 3 for like $3 on Switch.
Yeah, and I started Doom 3 a little bit. Again, kind of had some trouble with some checkpoint issues where it doesn't save it enough, and it bothers me. I don't like backtracking. We have an email about that today, by the way. I pulled up the emails. I will read that email shortly.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's one of the things we talked about in video game difficulty, too, where it's like, if I feel like I'm playing the same thing over and over again, like, that's just really annoying.
Yeah, I don't want to, if I die on the boss fight, I don't want to play the 20 minutes leading up to the boss fight again. Yeah. You know, it's not fun. But what have you been playing?
I have been playing Doom 2, because I finished the first Doom on Switch, and I've been playing, let me bring up my list of games here that I've been working on. Oh, we've been playing Gears of War 2. We made it through Act 3, so we're 3/5 of the way through Gears of War 2 on our journey through the Gears of War games. Got my title on Destiny 2 for Savior. We talked about that. Oh, Fire Emblem. Still working on that. I'm just playing it in bits and pieces at a time because I know it's really, really long. So if I try to dedicate a lot of time to it in big chunks, I think I'll burn myself out on it. So I just like to play a little bit at a time. And I've been having a lot of fun with that. I chose the Red House. I forget what the name of the house is, but it's the one that's led by the girl named Edelgard. She's my favorite. And so I chose to fight for her house.
That's very honorable of you.
Thanks. The other 2 houses seem neat as well, though. It doesn't seem like there's any bad choices here. But I'm still not sure what it affects storyline wise. If it just affects what characters you get to use in battle, or if it actually changes the storyline significantly. So I'll have to do some research on that to see if it's worth playing through multiple times or not. Other than that, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I've been playing. I bought Torchlight 2 on the Switch because it was on sale, but I haven't really played it. So, before we got on here to record, I didn't tell you this yet. I just got back from picking up an old Xbox 360 that I found on Facebook Marketplace for a good price, and I'm going to mod it and probably play some Xbox 360 games on it because I've never done a mod chip on a console before. So I think I'm gonna do that so that I can. That's like something on my nerd bucket list of like hardware modding a console. So
that's cool. Yeah, it sounds fun, dude. I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
I want to mention this real quick up top before I read some emails. We got 2 new ratings on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much. Whoever did that helps the show a lot, and it also means the world to us when you do that. It's really, you click the star, and it feels good. So thank you. We like it. We got 2 emails. They're both pretty short. I'm going to read the first one, and here we go. So this is from Ryan, our best friend Ryan. Remember? We love Ryan. Hey, fellas, your hopefully favorite Ryan chiming in. Again, just answered that for you, Ryan. You are our favorite, Ryan. Keep up the great work. And here's the guide so Mike can beat the beginning area of MGS2. He sent us the guide. You're a true hero, Ryan. Thank you. Oh, the subject is I got you, Mike. So thank you, Ryan. He also says, P.S. Found the Metal Gear collection on PS3 last weekend at Pawn America for $3.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he said, you guys are changing and haunting my life for real.
I hope that's the one that comes with the first Metal Gear Solid. That's a PlayStation 1 game, but it's in like a PS2 style case. That's like the best release of that game. I just think that's really cool.
That's awesome. Also, I got another email here. This is from Rude Days. You ready? I think Rude Days left us a review, too. Thank you, Rude Days. Hi, Mike and Tyler. First, want to say I enjoyed your latest discussion on video game difficulties. One thing I absolutely agree with you guys on is the long boss fights and having to restart at the beginning when you die. I recently played a game called Indivisible. Have you heard of that, Tyler?
No.
Well, he ran into the issue probably about a quarter of the way in when I died, and notice I went all the way back to the beginning of the battle. I decided to put down the controller and call it a day.
Yeah, that's what I do too when I like, especially in like Square Enix games or like Final Fantasy games where you die and it literally sends you back to the title screen. It's just like, oh, you just don't want me to keep playing because you're making me reload everything. It's like, oh, terrible.
Dude, he's got Rude Days has some great ideas here for future episodes. You ready? Ready for some ideas?
Yeah.
Here goes. Rude Day says, now, as far as possible future discussions, because I love hearing your guys' opinions, since I know you guys cover the past a lot, but maybe you can cover one topic for the future, and that is cloud gaming, Stadia, xCloud, GeForce Now, and what affects it could have on the gaming industry and even your guys' lives. It's true. How could it affect us?
I got some thoughts I could share there, too. That's a good idea.
I like that. Also, maybe you can discuss possible what-if scenarios for future stores. Like, for example, what if Nintendo and PlayStation never separated in the early 90s? And that prototype console the two made that had been in the news came to life. Had this happened, would Sega still have a console? Because there would be a third competitor in the console wars, ? Exclamation point. It's true.
Ooh, I love that.
Would Naughty Dog be around today? Would Nintendo still be a kid-friendly console they were at the time? Would another company rise up and take the market that PlayStation wouldn't have had? Would cats and dogs be living together in harmony? There's a lot of questions there, and they're all valid, especially the cats and dogs. Keep up the great work, guys, and looking forward to listening to the next episode, Rude Days. Thank you, Rude Days. That's some great stuff. We got to chuck that on that Google Doc with all the
oh, man, ideas. I love this what-if scenario, because, like, if Nintendo and Sony stayed together, then I think they'd still be kid-friendly, and Microsoft still would have rose up to take that place of that Sony kind of had, at least with the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 days of like being the mature console. I think Microsoft still would rise up to come out with the Xbox because they've been working on that plan for a long time, especially if there were only two competitors in the marketplace, if it was just Nintendo and Sega. I think Sega would still be around. Yeah.
I mean, we can't get into it too much. We got to save it for the episode.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree with you, you know? Also, ColecoVision, still around. I'm just kidding. I'm just making that up.
But they would be making leather. Connecticut Leather Company, still making leather.
Still making all the leather. But also, you can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. That's something you could do if you're feeling it. Next week, I don't know what I'm going to do. I mentioned Spec Ops: The Line earlier. I'm thinking about it because it's just a quick one-off game, but I kind of don't want to spoil it for Tyler, so I don't know, and I don't want to give Tyler homework where he has to beat a game in a week. So you have to figure out what we're going to do. Spec Ops: The Line is definitely on the list of things I really want to do, so we'll see next week. It's a surprise, I suppose. Thank you all so much for listening. Tyler, do you want to say bye to everybody?
Bye, everybody.